So how's your 60-day free trial of communism going? Not feeling it? Well, the good news is we're going to continue just in case you missed some of the benefits the first time round, albeit in a slightly milder form. You know, the lost job, your business being decimated, basically your means for existing. But it's worth remembering during this time that
we're all in this together.
I'm not.
You must be a public servant then. Yes, we're all in this together, unless you're one of those people who draws a wage from the earnings of others. Now, come on, Scott, surely you're not suggesting that all public servants are parasites feasting on the carcass of the productive economy? No, of course not. We can make distinctions between people providing a valuable service, for example, healthcare professionals directly engaged in the frontline fight against COVID-19. Oh wait, maybe the front lines ain't what they used to be. But seriously, we can make distinctions between people that are performing an important function and those that aren't. Like this pointless organisation that is funded to the tune of $6 million of taxpayer money per year that pushes a pointless agenda based on a non-problem. Now, I've found no reason to praise anything Jacinda Ardern has done since being handed the Prime Ministership by Winston Peters, but I have to say, taking a 20% pay cut for 6 months is commendable. It only extends to her cabinet, so yes, it's largely symbolic, but at least it's something. No such gesture from ScoMo. Back in early April, ScoMo said that we will get through this together. It's no longer about entitlement, it's about need. Well, he's right. We will get through this together. Some of us, like ScoMo, will do it with full paychecks, whilst others will have their entire livelihoods put on hold. ScoMo bravely said that a 2% pay increase scheduled for July has been frozen. As Adam Crichton noted in The Australian, foregoing a 2% July increase on already enormous salaries is a scene from a Monty Python skit. The 3,420-strong senior executive service, for instance, will be keeping their $238,000 to $453,000 salaries, not to mention the thousands of officials in federal and state regulators who earn at least as much. Now, in recent days, we've started to see a winding back of lockdown restrictions. In New South Wales, beaches, recreation areas and pubs were reopened, although in the case of pubs and restaurants, with some ridiculous rules. Restaurants and cafes in pubs and clubs will be able to open across New South Wales from Friday so long as they adhere to social distancing requirements and limit customers to 10 patrons per venue at any given time. Yeah, because all pubs and clubs are exactly the same size. Bars and gaming facilities will remain closed. However, table service for alcohol with a meal will be allowed. Now, only a bureaucrat that's absolutely clueless could come up with such bullshit. I can only serve alcohol if it accompanies a meal, which means I have to open the kitchen and have that expense whilst only having 10 customers. No, I think I'll stay closed and collect my government money instead. Now, of course, those that are fortunate enough to be able to email their work in for a living think this is absolutely fine. We must do everything to preserve human life, and that to open up the economy prematurely is to put the economy before lives, accompanied by the bromide that you can't put a price on a human life. But that's a false dichotomy. We're actually talking about trading off lives against other lives. Many people's lives depend on their ability to make a living. There are no good solutions here, only trade-offs. I mean, what is the cost of preventing X number of deaths from COVID-19 compared to the increased deaths from people not receiving medical assistance for other non-COVID illnesses, or the potential spike in suicides? But this kind of hard calculus is beyond the emotionally stunted. You only had to witness the social media outrage in response to economist Gigi Foster on Q&A when she said this.
Has anyone here actually thought about how would you get a measure of the traded lives? When we lock an economy down, what are we sacrificing in terms of lives? Economists have tried to do that, and we try to do it in currencies like the value of a statistical life, or the quality adjusted life year, or the well-being year. And those quantities enable you to think about lives on one side versus lives on the other. And I mean, if you do that kind of calculus, you realize very quickly that even with a very, very extreme epidemic in Australia, we are still potentially better off not having an economic lockdown in the first place.
You see, this is the kind of calm, rational approach that is required, but it isn't evident in any of the replies to what she said. Now, if you're one of those people that thinks we can't put a price on human life, let me ask you, have you ever heard of a life insurance policy? Do you know how they determine the compensation when a commercial airliner goes down, killing everyone on board? Now, if you want to say that you can't replace a life with money, then I agree, but that's a different argument. The fact is we put a price on human life all the time. Here's another way to think about it. In 2018, there were 1,145 road deaths in Australia, a little more than 3 per day, every day of the year. Are you willing to shut down all roads to prevent further fatalities? And before the emotional infants rush in and play Captain Obvious by pointing out that road fatalities aren't infectious, yes, of course they aren't, but that's to miss the point of the analogy. The point is you're willing to accept a certain level of road fatalities and the possibility that you might be one of them for the privilege of driving your car. If you're in the lockdown at all costs to prevent one more fatality camp, then kindly hand in your car keys. Besides, there's a growing body of evidence that lockdowns didn't do much of anything that social distancing already did. A study done at the American Enterprise Institute went as far as claiming, we don't need to have a national debate about whether the economic costs of lockdowns outweigh their public health benefits, because lockdowns do not provide public health benefits. You can read that study yourself, but if you're the type that wants to dismiss that study because it comes from the AEI, try political scientist Wilfred Riley from Kentucky State University. He made a comparison of states in the US showing there was no relationship between lockdowns and lower COVID-19 deaths. He controlled for population density, median income, median age, diversity as measured by percentage of minorities in a population, and the state's COVID-19 response strategy. The question the model set out to ask was whether lockdown states experienced fewer COVID-19 cases and deaths than social distancing states adjusted for all the above variables. The answer? No. The impact of state response strategy on both my cases and death measures was utterly insignificant. The only variable to be statistically significant in terms of cases and deaths was population. Across the US states, each increase in the population of 100,000 correlated with 1,779 additional COVID-19 cases, even with multiple other factors adjusted for. Large, densely populated areas are more likely to struggle with COVID-19 no matter what response strategy they adopt, although erring on the side of caution might make sense for global megacities such as New York and Chicago. That piece was written almost a month ago. He followed that up with a piece written about 10 days ago, including suggestions for additional variables to include in his model. Still, the conclusion was essentially the same. Look, when you have a global pandemic, it's best to overreact than do nothing at all. But we've done that here in Australia. It's clear we overreacted. We went too far, and it's past time we ended the lockdowns. That doesn't mean back to business as usual right now. Fears of second waves and the impending flu season here in Australia shouldn't be dismissed, but there's little evidence for the effectiveness of lockdowns over social distancing, something we've been doing at high traffic locations such as supermarkets this whole time, and I haven't heard of an outbreak amongst cashiers in supermarkets. Why can't other businesses carry on in the same vein? Open as normal, have social distancing norms around sanitizing hands, and not getting too close to others. And if you're in one of those high-risk categories, then you have to take extra special precautions, staying home more than usual. Why can't you be trusted? Because the government doesn't trust you as a business owner to do these things, unless you're Coles and Woolworths, of course. No, instead we have idiots that think they know better, that regardless of the size of your pub or restaurant, you can only have 10 patrons at a time, and you have to keep the kitchen open in order to serve the thing that most people go to the pub for in the first place. You just can't make this shit up. And just one final word on several comments I've seen on this channel and elsewhere from the now is not the time to be skeptical crowd. We just need to shut up and do what we're told by our political overlords and experts. No, it's precisely the time when draconian police measures are being rammed down your throat that you need to question it. That doesn't mean you have to engage in civil disobedience, but when rights are being curtailed, that is when you should be raising the most concerns. If not then, at what point do you start to question government overreach? As Adam Crichton tweeted out recently, official unemployment rate is now 6.2%. The reality is over 61% of the Australian workforce is now on welfare, 6 million on JobKeeper, 1.6 million on JobSeeker. Meanwhile, 16 people in ICU from coronavirus. What the fuck are we doing? It's time to end the madness and let people get back to earning a living. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.